If you take too many supplements, you actually shorten your lifespan. And that is concrete research that we have.
Nutritionist and author Rhiannon Lambert addressing lies everyone falls for online.
Less than 2% of nutritional information on TikTok is accurate.
I think the scariest ones, things like carnivore diets, things that can actually impact your health long term, but you don't see it initially. You might have a year of feeling amazing, but what you don't see is the clogging of your arteries from the amount of increased saturated fat, the risk of cancers and heart disease going up. That's quite scary. Then you've got all the powders, pills and lotions that are circulating, the never-ending collagen pills, gummies, green powders, just an absolute waste of money. The reality of nutrition is fasting came and fasting's gone. Some people have mass solutions everywhere. They have a menopause solution, or they have an energy solution, a hair solution. Actually, the human body cannot synthesize these man-made nutrients. Friends that say you need to take my powders every morning and go keto and buy my product.
Great marketing, terrible on your health. We see these headlines about how sweeteners are going to give us all cancer, we're going to die. On the other hand, you've got people saying that it's perfectly fine. What's your stance?
My opinion is that I'm not a fan of sweeteners because
gut health, have you any guidance on how we can support that?
gut health is amazing. The problem is, traditionally we use the plate method of let's make the star of our plate the meat, the fish, the animal produce, and let's build things around it. Whereas what we should be doing is, there's so many problems. The worst advice I personally was given was
Hey everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Success School podcast. I just want to say thank you so much for being here and taking time to listen to the show today. And I also just want to make sure you are aware that my whole mission with this podcast is to be able to give people access to conversations that are going to enlighten, they're going to inspire, and they're going to give you the information needed to genuinely start to live a happier, a healthier, and a more fulfilling life. But here's the thing, I am just one man. So that's really, really hard to get a lot of people to be positively impacted when I'm doing this alone. So I'm just going to ask a little favor. And I know you're probably sick of hearing this. You probably hear it on every podcast you listen to. But please, if you genuinely do think this podcast is valuable and can help people, if you could just take a second to hit that subscribe button and maybe go one further, tell other people about it, share it on your Insta stories, anything you can do to help bring more awareness to the show would be greatly appreciated. Thanks for being here, and I really hope you enjoy this episode. Rhiannon, a massive welcome back to the Success School podcast. I've been so excited to speak to you again. Last episode, and for those who haven't already checked it out, it's a few years ago. Do check it out. I know we covered an awful lot in that episode. We also spoke a little bit about your journey to where you've got to as well, which was really fascinating and just interesting to hear about your past as a singer, as a performer, and your relationship with nutrition and things like that. So I highly recommend everybody checks that out. But when you have checked that out, today I just want to dive straight in to giving as much understanding around nutrition and health as possible. I feel like we spoke about it last time, but still social media and media combined is such a whirlwind for all of us, and trying to navigate what is fact and what is false is so difficult. I want to start with, since you came on the show, I believe about 3 years ago now, is there anything that stands out to you that has changed or that we should be aware of when it comes to health and nutrition?
Still can't believe it's 3 years. When you say that, to me, it feels like it was last year.
So scary.
What's changed, I think, sadly, I don't think there have been many improvements. I think, like you said, the misinformation is rife, but more so perhaps because there's a lack of understanding on the media side of things, that everybody's unique. So the hardest thing to decipher nowadays is that there's little veins of truth amidst a massive statement, like something that sounds too good to be true, but there's a slight undertone of truth to it because there's a little bit of research or there's something, which makes it even harder for the public to decipher. And that's half of the battle, because we are unique. You cannot apply a one-size-fits-all approach to everybody. And I think what's made it worse and more confusing is that very fact there, that you've got perhaps a biochemist that has a leading platform on glucose and nutrition, yet no nutrition qualifications whatsoever. So And yet, because there's perhaps this person's a biochemist, if this is a good example, I think, there's a bit of science there. Therefore, everyone thinks, oh, that's really credible. Whereas actually, it's not in any way, shape, or form related to nutrition. So that is a confusing thing for people. And that's where I think we've got to, in a
Well, I
nutshell.
think let's dive straight in with the solution, which is weird. We're just going to get straight to it. Like, to just give people a general guide for where the credible places are to get the best sort of guidance. What, in your opinion, would that be?
I mean, first of all, anybody out there needs to have their own detective hat on. I always say this because anyone that is saying this way is the best way, everyone should be doing this, is just not true because we just don't
Yeah.
have all the answers. Nutritional science is such a new field, and anybody that calls themselves, a know-it-all,
Yeah.
doesn't,
Yeah.
they can't. Nobody can possibly know it all. I don't know it all. It's an ever-evolving field. So I think
Basically, ignore blanket statements like this is good, this is bad. That kind of stuff straight away is a bit of a red flag, would you say?
yeah, I mean, depending on the context, absolutely. I mean, there's some really obvious things like fiber is good for you, and I think we all know that that's true. Everyone's been saying have more brown carbs than white carbs for the last, 50 years, and that's a very obvious statement to make. But when it comes to perhaps everybody should fast because it's good for you, that obviously is not a great statement. That's not realistic. That will not work for everybody at all. So that would be number one. And then check the qualifications. And this is the hardest thing to do when it comes to my field of nutrition. A, because we're still fighting for the protected title of the word nutritionist. So a PT can call themselves a nutritionist, a biochemist can call themselves a nutritionist, a doctor can call themselves a nutritionist because it's not protected. Anybody can turn around and set up a nutrition company or a supplements company and have no qualifications. There's a very popular social media account by a guy that's actually got a marketing degree and he sells nutritional supplements in gummy form, little gummies, and says they're sugar free, they're better for you. And he's got no nutrition qualifications either. So check the qualifications, check they have at least 3 years in the subject of nutrition. And ideally, that they're holding themselves accountable to what they say. So they're accredited by the British Dietetic Association or the Association for Nutrition. Because if I say anything wrong, I get struck off the register and I'm in deep trouble. So you want somebody that's being watched, that is holding themselves accountable. I think they're the top things. Qualifications, no blanket statements at all, and the too good to be true narrative. Use your own detective hat and take what you want from it. Take the inspiration, but you don't need to take the whole thing literally.
I actually heard you say recently that it's estimated that less than 2% of nutritional information on TikTok is accurate. Like, let that just sink in, people, right?
It's not even an estimation, Matt. That was research. That's actual
literally
research.
2%.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so just be careful on TikTok. 98% of it is nonsense. Based on that, what in your experience are you seeing as some of the worst myths, some of the things that people are saying, this is the answer to health, that you're just like, no, we need to be clear, that is not true?
Do you know, it's vast. I think the scariest ones have been around a while now. Things like carnivore diets, things that can actually impact your health long term, but you don't see it initially. Like you might have a year of feeling amazing following a specific type of diet, but what you don't see is the clogging of your arteries from the amount of increased saturated fat, the risk of cancers and heart disease going up, which you wouldn't see for another 20 years, perhaps, depending on the age you embark upon a dietary change like this. So that's quite scary. Then you've got all the powders, pills, and lotions that are circulating, the never-ending trends, the never-ending collagen pills, marketing, gummies, everything that you need. Whereas the reality of nutrition is it's so simple. We just need to eat more fruit and veg, and it's not really rocket science. And that's what I find so amazing, is that if we go back to the less than 2% study, everybody eats. Everybody does. So it's something we all have control over. It's something we all do. Therefore, it's very emotive to us. It's very personal. We've got deep ingrained beliefs and psychological belief systems around the food that we eat. I'm so sorry if you just heard my WhatsApp notifications. I'm just going to turn that off on my laptop. I didn't realize I'd left that on.
No
Sorry.
worries.
But we all have beliefs, and that's why these things go viral or they trend or we see them all the time, because also it's achievable. We see something, go, oh, well, I could make that at home, or oh, I could just spend money on that and I can try that every single day. So the trends that come and go tend to be the things that people, for instance, fasting came and fasting's gone. Carnivore, like I said. I'm trying to think what else there is at the moment that people are doing, like chia seed waters and all
I
of
mean,
this.
what's your thought in general on just powders and getting your vitamins, minerals from those kind of things?
Green powder's just absolute waste of money. It's an ultra processed food, a green powder. And I think if you eat a very good diet and psychologically it's giving you a bit of a boost or a benefit, you can say that, if it's something that keeps you to stick to a good diet because it's part of your routine, but that's an expensive way to stick to what you need to do. And you cannot possibly absorb, first of all, the problem with, and I know because I have a supplements company and we just sell vitamin D, a vegan multi and a pregnancy multi, because they're the only things I believe have evidence behind them. So I only have a range of 4 products. Because that's what people need. But some people have mass solutions everywhere. They have a menopause solution, or they have a energy solution, a hair solution. Actually, the human body cannot synthesize these man-made nutrients in a large dose in one go. It's like getting onto a bus and who's going to get there first and who's going to get the best seat, and you're all lining up outside. It's the same with all the vitamins. You've got vitamin B, you've got iodine, you've got magnesium, vitamin A, and they're all lining up outside the bus. Who's actually going to get on first and get to work inside your body? It's a gamble. A lot of the time you're just excreting in your urine, which is why it goes bright yellow, the extra nutrients from that multivitamin. And it puts more stress on your body. And without being too fear-mongery, because that's not what I'm about, if you take too many supplements, you actually shorten your lifespan. And that is concrete research that we have. I think a lot of people don't realize that supplements can be harmful. They can have really negative consequences. And again, we won't see that for a very long time. The pressure it puts on your body to take more of these synthetic things that we're not designed to break down naturally. But they have a place. Imagine you have Crohn's disease and you're automatically going to be deficient in a few nutrients. You need some kind of help. And if that's going to help in a small way, that's great. That's when supplements have a place. Vitamin D is one that everybody should be taking because we just do not get enough sunlight in this country. It contributes to our immune system, a variety of other conditions. And
to be clear, that's one of the vitamins we don't get from nutrition. Is that right?
yeah, you don't only get it really in the available form that our body needs, the bioavailable form from sunlight. And then we wear sun cream because we obviously don't want to expose ourselves to skin cancer. So we're blocking all the rays that we possibly could get. And actually, people with a darker skin, like black skin, they need to be really careful and might need to take it all year round. So depending on your ethnicity, your cultural background, that also dictates how much you get from sunlight. And also, it's actually really interesting. I had a dermatologist on my podcast, and the reason that, different cultural backgrounds age differently. Like, I think I've got really pale, I'm like ghost white skin, and I'm not going to age as well as someone that has amazing, like my godmother's black. She's got the most amazing skin. And it's the melanin contributions, but also that's impacting our vitamin D absorption. So supplements have a place, but the trends that say you need to take my powders every morning and go keto and buy my products, bad.
Great marketing, terrible on your health.
Yes.
Let's say it like that. And you mentioned there about, nutrition being emotive, and it's something, we all do. We all need to eat. We all do eat. What's your thoughts on people's relationships with food? I think in terms of helping people have a better relationship with food, because I think for a lot of us, we do have a difficult relationship with food. And I know I have for many, many years. I know we spoke last time we were on the show about both of us, our background as performers, and sort of a lot of the pressures and the societal pressures we put on ourselves to, our physique being number one rather than health and things like that. What would you say to help people navigate their relationship with nutrition?
Take off the blame, take off the guilt. We live in a society that is not supporting us to be connected with our food. It does not support us to be healthy, and that has to change. These are governmental issues, food manufacturing issues. We actually have, and you'll see it in January when it comes out. I can't disclose what exactly it is, but there's a change to the guidelines in January coming, finally, that we've been pushing for years. Because the food system doesn't support you. So there's no wonder we don't have healthier relationships with food. We're so disconnected. You can look at a pack of I don't know, ethically aside, but you can look at a pack of meat and not know where that meat's come from or how it got there or the quality of it. You can look at vegetables and not know how far they've traveled. We don't know where food's from. We're not brought up in an environment where our parents maybe cooked as much as they do today. We've lost that kind of skill. We're now time poor because jobs and pressures of work expect us to work more than ever before. Society, family dynamics, the pressures, the amount of time it takes to actually have that window of time. There seems to always be so much other things to do. So the psychology behind it, there's almost everything stacked against you not to achieve a healthy relationship with food. So remove that guilt, remove that blame straight away. It's not you, it's the world we live in, it's the system, it's the UK. The second fact with food is to start to separate fact or fiction in your head. So if you're having a difficult day, just stop and say, is it a fact that this is true, that I'm saying this about my body, this is how I feel right now? Or is it actually that I'm feeling this way? This is my emotions talking, and the coping skill I've developed my whole life is to turn to food or to turn away from food. And that is also a remarkable coping skill that people have developed, Matt, because you haven't gone to drugs, you haven't gone to alcohol, you're not smoking, you've gone to food. So that's something. But, we're not given the tools to support our feelings and our emotions. So I think trying to add in, and I think the positive approach to nutrition that's currently trending, which I like, is plant diversity, because we know about gut health now. And that's quite a positive thing. Try and eat a lot of variety, let's try and experiment with food. Let's get excited about food, rather than thinking what I can take out. But this is a big subject to cover in this time on this chat.
I do think that one thing that really helped me, and a lot of people that follow me know I did a bodybuilding competition, and I do not really condone it. I don't really advocate bodybuilding, full stop. I just don't think it's a healthy thing to do. But I think that transition of being in that mindset of competing for physique instead of health, and then coming through that and going, actually, we need to put health on a pedestal, not how we look. And as a byproduct, naturally, it's going to change your physique anyway if you are seriously putting health first. And I know a lot of people struggle with that because, again, all the things you've said there about, and from such a young age, we've got so much advertising being thrown at us as children that are promoting all these foods. And it makes it really tough. And we put our physique on a pedestal, so many of us. And I think just that shift of going, hang on, let me learn more about health, about the human body, about how it's going to function well, about energy, about mood, about all these things. And if I can put that on a pedestal, naturally I'm going to look pretty decent as well, right?
It's going to help. And I think a lot of people come to the Rhitrition clinic and actually they don't need a nutritionist or a dietitian. They need a psychologist. And sometimes the best intervention we can have, which everyone deserves access to, I wish it was there, is a psychologist that specializes in relationships with food. I'm really lucky I hired two for my clinic for that purpose. We work alongside our psychologists because that's the hardest thing to crack. It's the hardest thing because the way we behave, the way we feel and think is a root of that exposure that you've discussed there, or that childhood. It can come from a variety of reasons. It could be that you're on the spectrum, or you have ADHD, you have a certain condition, and that also dictates your relationship with food. So it's so complex that the psychology, actually, a lot of the time, I wish people booked in more for the psychology than to see myself or one of my team that are nutritional experts.
All right, let's just go for some of these kind of borderline blanket statements, these things that people see and maybe then get behind a trend and jump on it. Let's just give some nuance to some of these. So the first one is plant-based diets.
Yeah.
Is it that we should just all be vegan? Is that the healthiest way? Or should we at least be going towards more plant-based? What's your take on that?
No one size fits all. It's not vegan, plant-based. I think anyone that follows my social media will know I'm a huge fan because it just means eat more plants. It doesn't mean you have to give up meat, fish, or dairy. It does not mean that. It just means get more plants on your plate. So traditionally we use the plate method of let's make the star of our plate, the meat, the fish, the animal produce, and let's build things around it. Whereas what we should be doing is making the star the sides, the healthy carbs, the vegetables, and then a small portion of the choice you want, the protein in the middle. That could be plant vegan or it could be animal produce. I don't mind. But we've got a very strange way of building things. And it really, struck me. I had this interview with the Times Radio with a chef who runs a restaurant in Westminster, a really popular restaurant that all the MPs go to. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And she was telling me, oh my goodness, I don't think I could create a whole plant-based menu. I was like, what do you mean? She goes, well, here, how we're taught to cook as chefs is to learn how to cook the meat or the fish and add the flavor and add all the butter and all the other stuff. And then we just have like two potatoes on the side or like a teeny tiny bit of extras around the plate. So plant-based diets are good for the environment, good for your health. They increase your fiber. They help with weight maintenance. It helps with gut health. It helps with your mental health. The list goes on. I don't think anyone can disprove it in the scientific world that's credible.
And then let's look at fasting, like the longer periods of fasting beyond just sort of sleep fasting. Generally, is this good for health? Is this bad for health? And obviously, the caveat straight away is no one size fits all. I hope everybody's getting that. That's the first part. But what's your general thoughts on fasting for health?
That you don't have to eat breakfast every morning if you don't want to. You don't have to eat lunch every day. There's no set rule. So naturally, if that is the way you're inclined, then you're already doing this kind of fasting that people are talking about that has some research behind it. But you know, when it becomes a restrictive, I'm going to fast, I'm not going to eat until this one time every day, and then it causes binge eating, or it causes a poor relationship with food, or it causes a lack of cognition. So how you're feeling, how you're performing every morning, you're getting tired, you can't focus because you've skipped a meal. That's not good for you. So there's also a gender divide here with hormonal function, and actually fasting tends generically to suit males more than females, purely because of the hormone makeup that we have and fluctuations depending on what week of the month it is. If you're going through perimenopause, menopause, you're menstruating, whatever it may be. So breakfast is one of the key meals in the UK that people get their fiber intake. Everyone is pretty much deficient in fiber. We're not hitting the 30 grams a day. If you take breakfast out of the equation, and your lunch isn't good and your dinner's not good, you're definitely not going to hit your fiber intake. There's no miracle. We're still waiting on research on fasting. We still don't have enough for me to say everyone should do it.
Okay, sweeteners is the next one. So on one hand, I think we see these headlines about how sweeteners are going to give us all cancer, we're going to die. On the other hand, you've got people saying you'd need to drink so many, Diet Cokes or Coke Zeros or whatever, that to even have a small chance that it's perfectly fine and we shouldn't demonize it. What's your stance?
Okay, my opinion, not my professional hat, just to make that really clear, is that I'm not a fan of sweeteners. However, my professional hat does agree with the last statement you said, that you would need to have so many of them to have any impact on health whatsoever. The reason I'm not a fan is because the World Health Organization introduced sweeteners as a way to tackle the obesity crisis. They thought if we then reduce the amount of sugar in products and replace them with sweeteners, we're going to help everybody. It didn't work. And they now state, if you go and Google it and you look on their website, they state, do not use artificially sweetened beverages as a way for weight maintenance or weight loss, because it doesn't work. What they do is spike your appetite further, and they can make you want more. So it gives you that taste of something sweet, yet you're not satisfied because nothing's happening biologically inside your body. Therefore, you're going to still be craving. It could increase cravings potentially for more sweet items or more food. Disruptions to the gut bacteria, we're still investigating. Their invention for me hasn't been positive for so many people. However, again, there is a place for them in some items, like if you're trying to take the vitamin D spray, it would taste awful if you didn't have a little bit of a nice flavour to it. In hospital environments, there are drinks and things that are made for patients that need to have a taste and a palate, and the best way to do that for that particular patient is to use a sweetener. So should they be part of your everyday diet? Absolutely not. Are they an occasional item that is fine? Yes.
Love that. Okay, brilliant. Gut health. A lot of us are hearing more and more in the media about gut health and its importance, but we don't fully understand what it is and what we should be doing. Again, because it's that deciphering the science versus the marketing of, I think gut health has almost become a little bit like protein, where it's like people just add great for your gut health to all these products, but we're kind of like, is it really? And I know the same has happened with protein, high in protein, and they're not necessarily the best nutritional choice. So have you any guidance on gut health and how we can support that?
We should have mentioned protein as the fad, shouldn't we, at the beginning? Because that drives me insane. No one should be worried about their protein intake in this country. It's just not a thing. Gut health wise, It is a thing. And the problem with this amazing thing, I don't know why I'm calling it, I need to change the language I'm using. Gut health is amazing. The problem is your overall diet quality still matters, and what you eat every day and how you live and what you do also matters. So you could be increasing your gut diversity and having all these plants, which are great, and still not sleeping well, smoking, drinking, overeating the amount of the good stuff, and still not be healthy as a result. So yes, my 4-year-old has a book about belly bugs. I never had that growing up. How amazing that kids these days can grow up and be like, wow, if I eat all these different things, how cool is that for the bacteria inside my gut? I'm going to have better poos on the toilet. I'm going to feel better. I'm going to have better mood. I'm going to feel happier most days. So that connection is really important to understand that what we eat does impact our mental health. The reason for that is the gut bacteria and the signaling that goes on between our gut and our brain. Our gut bacteria help synthesize vitamins, vitamins B in particular, B vitamins. Our gut bacteria supports our immune system because they literally reside there, like 70 to 90% live inside the gut area. But it's a new science, and I think communicating this message has been totally blown out of proportion. You've got some scientists, and I know because I know them, they're very trigger happy about gut health, but overly so, where it's all they see and they forget about the other problems in society that we've got. That, it's all very well saying gut health's great. We still have tons of ultra processed foods out there, tons of sweeteners, emulsifiers. The cost of food is insane. The amount we import is insane, the time poor factor of our lives. So it's not a miracle, but yeah, if it's going to help you, please, please try and eat as much diverse stuff as you can every day because it is really good for you.
Okay, we're going to go through some of the questions that have been submitted by our members today. So we're going to start with Davinia, and she's speaking about improving sleep. She says she's struggling to sleep, predominantly due to perimenopause. And she says because of that, she's made some changes. She's stopped eating as late at night. She's reduced sugars in general and only now gets them from more natural sources like berries, but she's still really struggling and like waking up at 2, 3 a.m., things like that. She just says, have you got any guidelines, any tips for her?
Yeah, diet isn't a panacea of health. There's just a reminder that diet will help reduce symptoms of menopause by maybe 30%, in some cases up to 50%, so you can halve them. So your diet will help you go through any transition for any woman listening from perimenopause to menopause, but it can't completely eliminate those symptoms. Um, for sleep, we have very little. It was very interesting because the first study ever of its kind, the PREDICT study that's run by Professor Sarah Berry, who heads up the scientific thing of Zoe, but she has 200,000 strong participant base, which we've never had in the history of research for women ever. So one amazing thing that's come from this particular program is the data we have to pull from it. She said there's like nearly up to 100 different symptoms of menopause. It's not just hot flushes and a lack of sleep. There's so many things. And we haven't got direct links yet between food and those specific areas. There's hormonal links, obviously, because the insomnia is probably, I'm not an expert in this, but probably caused by dips of hormones that cause surges of others, which cause us to experience all sorts of symptoms and are so much going on in our brain. Food wise, for sleep, what I can say is you really want to be looking at tryptophan, and that's an amino acid, a building block of protein. You get that in things like turkey and yogurts. Up your nuts and seeds, your healthy fats. When we go through menopause, we stop synthesizing food in the same way that we did previously because of the estrogen, the lack of estrogen. And we probably cope better, most women, not all, with more healthy fats than we did previously. It's like switching the ratio of how we used to eat, and sugars we aren't as tolerant to, and alcohol and things like that. So I haven't been able to directly answer the question, but I can say that diet could help reduce those symptoms if you find what works for you.
Great. Okay, next up we've got Penny Richards. She says that she's been vegetarian, but she's now trying to switch to more vegan. She just says, have you got any top recommendations to help her make sure she's getting enough protein and sort of protein sources on a vegan diet?
So interesting, Penny, because I think you're probably doing very well at protein and you're not realizing it. If you actually were to look at what you eat every day and add it up, the things I'm more worried about when people switch from vegetarian to vegan diets is their iodine, that you only get iodine from dairy and fish. So the minute people go vegan, and iodine plays a role in your thyroid function and your brain health. So that's a key nutrient to really be aware of. And then B12, I think you probably heard and read about, most people do, which you only get in animal produce. Then iron levels as well, because plant sources of iron are harder to absorb the heme than in animal sources. So always pair your plant irons, even in dried apricots, chickpeas, all those things contain iron, but you need to have it with vitamin C to aid absorption. Zinc as well is a key little micronutrient that you only really get from shellfish, but you can get in some nuts and seeds. So, just trying to think, this, I hate doing stuff like this, but I wrote a plant-based nutrition book, and all of these questions are in there. It's a good resource. It's the one behind me in the corner. Don't know if people can see it on my screen. The Science of Plant-Based Nutrition is like an encyclopedia for people wanting to make that switch. I also list all the amount of protein in tempeh, tofu, soy yogurt, nuts, seeds. Even broccoli contains some protein, rice contains some protein, quinoa, and it will all be there. So I really hope that helps. I would use that book as your transition Bible to it.
Great. Brilliant. Emma Pickup next. She says, do the online allergy tests actually work? And if so, which would you recommend are better? And just general advice around allergies and getting tested and things like that.
I think you might mean intolerances. Allergies are life-threatening, so you will know if you have an allergy. You'll have a severe reaction if you have an allergy. The only ones that you can test for legitimately are probably celiac and lactose, so the key things you can test for intolerance-wise. There isn't a single kit I could recommend to you on the internet for them. If there was, oh my goodness, it would save the NHS millions. Can you imagine like the money that would saved if we could all just take a test at home and know what works for us and what doesn't? We just don't have the science. There's so many kits that charge like £500 to more, I would say, take your money to do these sorts of things. It's just, there's just no way of knowing. I did a podcast episode on food for thought with an IBS dietitian and a gut health specialist that we specifically discussed test kits, and we go into depth about it. And I think she does a better job than I will explaining it.
So go check that episode out then.
Yeah, it's on.
And just to be clear, so that everyone listening is clear, when Davina McCall and Stephen Bartlett are telling us to stab something in our arm, and this is going to tell us everything we need to know, can we be clear that that's not really going to be the answer?
So that's about blood sugar monitoring. So
Okay.
they're not testing for intolerances or allergies. They're looking at how you respond to foods. But to be honest, I don't think you need one of those monitors unless you're pre-diabetic or diabetic to know that. You don't need to have one of those to be healthy. What it can be is it can hold you accountable. So for instance, for some people, they find having a device like a watch or a thing in their arm or, something on your phone a really good way of keeping a track of things. But it's definitely not a necessity at all. And your blood sugar goes up and down every day anyway. I call it the blood sugar roller coaster. I actually wrote about it in 2017 in my first book called The Blood Sugar Balance, the roller coaster. And it's just important to eat proteins and fats with your carbs. It's like saying, oh, I'm just going to have a bowl of oats with water and oat milk. That's just pure carbohydrates. So you're going to get a huge spike, insulin's coming out to help bring that down, and then a huge crash. Whereas if you had those oats with some healthy fats and protein, probably would only go up a little bit and then it would go down. Whereas if you just ate an egg, you're not really going to get a spike because there's no carbohydrates, so it's just protein. Doesn't mean you should just not eat carbs. That's the problem with these things. You do need your healthy carbs, but let's figure out what works for you.
I remember you saying last time about it all working in harmony, and actually food's almost designed to work together, and we should be thinking about that with every meal, which I just love. Final one from the members. Matt Zena says he's working on the assumption that obesity is insulin resistance. He says that what he understands is people are glucose spiking for 12 hours per day and therefore disrupting how the body stores energy. And for him, what he thinks is that's the antithesis of the long-term oversimplified, it's just calories in versus calories out. He wonders, where do you stand on that suggestion?
Gosh, you've really thought about that. That I see where you're coming from. So everyone thinks blood sugar spikes are now it's basically become the new calorie counting. It's just another measure. It's going to be around for a bit and then it'll go away again because it's a trend. Um, Calorie counting doesn't work because it's not accurate. And to say that obesity is simply down to that is just unfair on anyone that's living with obesity because obesity is so complex. There's genetic elements being researched every day as well with having appetite regulatory signals. The problem is when you become overweight, then you become obese because of the buildup of body fat, you start to get dysregulation in your hormones and your signaling. So everything becomes dysregulated, everything, which makes it even harder for that person to control their appetite, which makes it even harder for them to make changes. And it's not simply because of their insulin changing. That is one huge area that is going to change with the more body fat you gain. It does become more difficult, but that is not the cause of the obesity crisis. The reason more people are overweight is also because of the products that are on the shop shelves, the food that is being produced, the things people are eating every single day without knowing because it's cleverly marketed, as well as the environment, as well as the lack of movement that we get every day because we're having to drive to work, we sit at work, we have to drive home, we have to get the kids from school, and then by the time the evening comes, a quick meal, or we don't have the cooking skills, we weren't brought up with it. So it's not first nature to us, or second nature is the phrase, isn't it? To go and whip up. An example, I was on a panel last week with the most incredible chef. She is amazing. And we were talking about raising healthy children. She said, I just don't understand. She said, I have my child in the kitchen with me. I teach her how to cook with me, you know. I'm like, why would I need to buy something when I've got loads of vegetables in my fridge and things in my cupboard? And I said, look, I wish I was you and I wish I had those cooking skills and I wish I knew how to quickly whip up something like this fancy doolally dish, you know, really quickly out the fridge. But I don't. I wasn't brought up with a chef for a parent. Therefore, I don't have those cooking skills. And I find it hard. And it is a challenge for me to open a recipe book and find that recipe. There's also the psychology, the emotional aspect we discussed. Obesity, guys, is so complex. That's what I did my master's degree in obesity risks and prevention. We need more kindness, less pointing the finger. It's not just blood sugar balance, it's so much more.
So I'm gonna go into the general life questions that I ask all guests now, but before that, I do want to just bring this
Oh,
book
you got
front and center because I know you mentioned there the science of plant-based nutrition as well as your 2017 book there, but this is, I believe, 2021 you brought this one
very
out.
good. I need to send you the new one, Matt. I'll do that as well. But thanks.
Yay! But this is the science of nutrition. This is the one that I've had, and I just want to really highly recommend it to everybody because in a world where we've got so much complexity online and it's really hard to decipher what is fact and what is fiction, I just think you've created a brilliant Bible here that literally answers all the key questions that you could need answering. So if this podcast has maybe just been a little bit of a taster to get you thinking more and prioritizing this subject, I think this book works perfectly in sync with being the next port of call for everybody. And I just want to read even just the contents here, just to be clear. A lot of how you've designed this, Rhiannon, is to just very simply ask the questions we're all asking and then provide an answer. And if you just look at the contents, you know, we've got what is nutrition? And then you break that down into, you know, what's micronutrients, macronutrients, all that kind of thing. We've got how can we eat well? Should I go on a diet? Should I choose plant-based nutrition? Can we eat for better health outcomes? How does nutrition affect child development? And can we eat to support mental health? Just as the overall general topics. And then there's so many more things you cover in there. It's really easy to follow. There's some great diagrams and all that kind of, you know, it's not just like a really wordy book. For somebody
Yeah.
like me, who's not got a science degree and all this kind of stuff, I understand it and it really helps me. So I just want to really shout this out, Rhiannon.
Thank
It's
you.
a fantastic book. And I just want to
It's,
say anybody,
thanks.
yeah, go check it out.
It's
And
an encyclopedia, isn't it, of nutrition? I just felt there wasn't anything, Matt. There just wasn't anything for people to, you know, go to that I think we're bored of being dumbed down and lied to with snappy headlines, and we don't want to read a really text-heavy page after page book. We just want to know and then make a choice from what you've read that works for you. That's it. Yeah.
great. I can see people in the chat already saying we'll be ordering a copy. Honestly, you won't regret it. It's great. And just keep picking it up and putting it down as and when these questions come to
Yeah.
you because there's so much
Yeah.
in there.
quick question. This is probably the most important question you will answer today. Have you got your tickets to our next event yet? Seriously, guys, I'm not just bigging this up because it's my event. Genuinely, this is gonna be one of the best events of 2025. Out of everything that I do, I can honestly say this is the thing I put the most energy, effort, attention into, and it's one of the things I enjoy the most. It's going to be a day jam-packed with incredible speakers talking about business, mindset, sales, and marketing. And not only is there going to be some incredible speakers, but this is going to be a room filled with people who are committed to being the best version of themselves, which I would say is going to be quite a good room to be in if you want to achieve more in your life. So if you haven't already, make sure you click the link in the show notes, get your tickets, and I'll be so excited to see you there on Sunday, the 2nd of February. Get your tickets. Have you got them yet? Right. We'll get back to the episode.
All right, Rhiannon, final few questions before we finish. These are the general life questions that I ask all the guests on the show. So the first one is, what is some of the best advice you've received in your life and why?
Probably, I think it's probably what I said last time, but I think it's just treat others how you'd want to be treated. My dad said that to me when I was young because his dad said it to him. I just feel it doesn't take much to be nice and kind.
Flip side, and this is probably something you've got so many reference points in your industry, but what is some of the worst advice that turned out not to be true, that's not been helpful?
In my industry, there would be so much. I think it would be the narrative of, well, this is the one problem that is the cause of everyone's problems because the world is too big a place and there's so many problems. The worst advice I personally was given was to hire somebody actually in my business last year. I was very vulnerable. I just had my second baby. He's now 2, but he was just turning 1 then. So I was in the midst of, the sleep deprivation and all the chaos that comes with having a baby and trying to run a business. And the biggest mistake I actually made was she said, trust me, basically give me your entire email account, your finances, everything. Yeah, and I made the mistake of being that trusting of somebody, and it didn't end up well for my business last year, and I really suffered a hard hit from trusting someone. So I think the worst advice is literally to trust, and it sounds awful, is to trust somebody with everything. I think you are your own guide. You need to trust yourself instinctively, and I'm not making any sense, am I? I hope that does make sense, that you are your best. You are your best advocate for you, is what I'm trying to say.
What I take from that is learn to trust yourself a little bit more.
Yes.
You usually have the answers within you.
Yes.
But we don't trust it so often.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one is, what are 3 life lessons that you would give people as a guide? The whole ethos behind this podcast is to help people live happier, healthier, and more fulfilled lives. So if you could share 3 truths with the world that would help them live happier, healthier, more fulfilled, what would you say?
The key word of respect, and I think this has always been my biggest thing, is we have to respect others, respect the world we live in, respect ourselves, because without that word respect, we can't move forwards and communicate with one another well, because everyone behind closed doors has something going on, and we need to respect our food. We need to respect everything, the way things work in the world. Like in The Lion King, it's the circle of life kind of vibe. So respect would be number 1. The second would be to live in a way that is going to make you happy. So shut out all the noise and really take a moment to think about what you need in that moment and what you want as well. And then the third would be kindness. I think they're the 3 things that make the world kind of tick. If you respect, if you know what's actually going to make you happy, it cuts out all the dithering along the way, and then being kind about it, I think is probably a nice way to move forwards.
Beautiful. If people want to follow you online, could you just give a shout out? What's your handles? Where can they find you and get more of your content?
Yeah, it's at Rhitrition, which is like my name, Rhiannon, but with the merge of the word nutrition into it, Rhitrition. And anywhere, I'm everywhere now, I think these days. I mean, I'm not so good on the TikTok channels. Instagram, I try to use my platform to talk about things like we have done today. I try to do these things. Often they don't get in the algorithm in the same way as the recipes I post and those other sorts of things. And the Food for Thought podcast.
Amazing. Sorry, I think my internet
Yeah, I
just
think you
just
froze.
got
So
there.
I was
I'm
like,
back.
oh,
I'm back. I promise I won't leave you. Yeah, that's amazing. And maybe we need to get you
okay.
on TikTok a little bit more and get that percent a little bit
Yeah.
higher for the truth that's on there. Rhiannon, this has been amazing. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. Final question, as we ask every single time. It may have changed. It may be the same as last time. But what is your personal definition of success?
Being able to live in the moment and being happy. I think that's really hard. And if I can actually be like, wow, I live in the moment now, I feel like that's quite a success to achieve because we're always striving. I used to be that person that I need to always look to the next thing or look to the holiday. But actually, it's really a huge success if you can be like, wow, I'm going to make today really great because it's so hard to do. Don't know why.
I agree so much. Being present and appreciating the
Yeah.
present is massive. Rhiannon, thank you so much. This has been amazing. I know you need to go now, so I'll let you leave, but thank you so much, Rhiannon.
Thank you for having me. Thank you,
Take
everybody.
care. See you
Bye.
later, everybody. See you. Thank you so much. Bye bye.